Okay, welcome everybody to IMO International Day for Women in Maritime, which is actually the 18th, but our meeting today is on the 17th, and we have reflections on being a woman in maritime, some personal and lived experiences, and we have Heather Enness MNM HCMM in person, ably assisted by Kat, who's joined us. We hope to have Jessica Tyson, MLA FNI via Zoom, and we have 3 recordings. So we'll start off with the 3 recordings, and these recordings are going to be from Jillian Carson-Jackson FNI, Loren, Trevorrow, MNI, and Kate Bollanou. So everybody, please enjoy the challenge of being a woman, but a bit of diversity, no doubt, we're going to talk about, but also a celebration of the impact that women have, and hopefully they will have in the future. So thank you, Holly, if you'd like to run the video.
Hi, my name's Loren, and I am here speaking to you on the occasion of International Women in Maritime Day 2023. Now, unfortunately, I am unable to be there with you in person tonight as I'm currently on board ship, but I still wanted to use this opportunity to share my story and what it's like to be a woman in the Merchant Navy in 2023. So I think the easiest way to tell you how I got into this career is just to show you. So I started my cadetship in September 2019, sponsored by Chiltern Maritime and the Maritime Educational Foundation. I was incredibly lucky to have such a wide variety of vessels during my cadetship, considering my cohort was so negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Myself included, I was unable to complete enough sea time in my phase 2, therefore was held back to ensure that I could complete all my sea time before starting my phase 5. Now, I was lucky to not only have 2 cruise ships in my cadetship, but also a buoy tender and a Royal Navy Ocean Patrol vessel. And I truly believe these were incredible experiences and have really shaped me to be the person I am today. So I can say my cadetship was a bit of a rocky road, considering the COVID-19 pandemic affected it quite badly, meaning that my sea time had a large portion of it laid up alongside with no shore leave and no sailing time, which as a deck cadet was quite difficult to try and get the navigational bridge time on the other ships. But I must say I am incredibly lucky to have had an incredible crew and great experience on all my vessels, that it really balanced out to be a great cadetship. Despite having incredible experiences on other vessel types, during my cadetship, I think I knew I always wanted to stick with my childhood dream of working on cruise ships. And when I received my certificate of competency in January, I made it my goal that I really wanted to be within the industry as soon as possible. Now, I didn't realise how difficult it was to get a position as a newly qualified officer in any industry in the Merchant Navy, let alone the cruise industry. And it took a lot longer than I expected, and I didn't think I was going to be in the position that I really wanted to be in. And I'm incredibly lucky to say that I am working for my dream company, Scenic Luxury Cruises, on their new build expedition yacht, Scenic Eclipse 2, as you will be seeing this. So when Gordon contacted me and asked me to speak at this event tonight, I honestly had no idea what I could say. I saw Anne's incredible presentation last year about what it's like to be a woman in maritime, and I think it really summed up the good and the bad that you see at sea. I'm rather lucky to say that I had a majorly positive experience during my cadetship, and I was welcomed so well by all the crew and supported throughout my sea phase. And not only that, but the passengers were extremely supportive and happy to see a woman in the technical side of maritime. But unfortunately, there were the odd few occasions which I felt like I didn't want to work at sea. And I tried to put that behind me and think of all the positive experiences that I've had so far. Why should I let that one thing ruin it? I think it's really important to say on a day like this that it's not only women that have bad experiences on ships, but anyone can, and it can really badly affect your mental health. In a career that you live where you work and socialise with the same people 24 hours a day for months on end, it is important to have that support network, and I'm lucky to have been on ships where we've created a little family and we've always been there for each other. But in that case that you don't have that support network, there are places out there such as Safer Waves who are able to help you in your time of need. And I think these places need to be advertised more, and more seafarers should be able to know that they have someone to contact. When I started my cadetship at Warsash, it was great to see an influx of female cadets coming through each cohort. I was lucky to be one of 7 female cadets in a 35 class, and that number is ever increasing per class, per cohort. So at Warsash, we were then able to create a Women in Maritime group with our lecturer, Claire, and this was created for all the women to support each other and be able to ask questions about what it's like to work on board. It's very scary to stand up in a class of majorly males and ask, how many period products am I required to take? Do they have any on board? What's it going to be like? How do I stand up for myself if someone doesn't like me being there? And this group allowed us to feel a lot more comfortable and ask these questions in a more relaxed environment. More recently, at the end of my Phase 5, a buddy network was set up for those who wanted to be involved, which meant a Phase 5 female was able to be paired with a new Phase 1. And this means that they are able to ask any questions they want, talk about experiences, even ask for help in terms of the training. And I really wish I had that when I was first starting out, as there were so many questions that I had left unanswered because I didn't feel comfortable to ask them. I am still in contact with the girl I was partnered with, and I am still able to help her whenever she has any questions, and I feel that is the best thing I can do, as there were so many people that helped me throughout my cadetship. I would want to do the same thing for people doing theirs right now. I think one thing that is also skipped across when we talk about the effect on women in maritime is social media. Now, social media is a great platform that we can use to expand the industry and learn lots more about it. And being born with a 2 in front of the year means that I have grown up in the era of technology. There are so many platforms that are now being used by seafarers to show their career and their experiences and help promote the industry, especially places like YouTube, LinkedIn and Instagram. And there are certain accounts which you may have heard of, especially in the women in maritime industry, being Captain Kate and Rachel May at Sea, and these are incredible people who are sharing their journey, and I really salute them for being so publicly open about what it's like to be a woman at sea. As with any social media post, anyone can comment what they want, and it's unfortunate to see that people promoting women in maritime are often getting sexualised. And if you scroll through comments on certain big women in maritime figures, you'll notice that a lot of them are talking about the way she looks rather than the job she does. And it's something that people would not say in person if they are on board. There's also been occasions where I have had crew members be incredibly nice and supportive to me on board, yet contact me on social media in a very different way. And it does make you feel uncomfortable because you think you get on with the person and they're there to help you, but you see a different side of them. I'm a big advocate of social media and being able to have the platform where you can share what you want with friends and family, or with the world if you wish to. And I've been lucky to be able to make some friends through the industry via social media, just from asking questions about what it's like to be at sea. I think despite saying about these bad sides of working in the industry, this is such an incredible career to work in, as any industry will have its downsides, and we've just got to work through them. And if anything, it makes us more motivated to get to the position that we are today. We need to voice the positive experiences that we had to inspire the next generation to be able to come and begin this career, and also be there for those in the career who are currently struggling or finding it hard for any reason. I just want to thank everyone for listening tonight. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, so I have to stare at this camera, but I hope I was able to shed some light on some different aspects of the industry and some things that aren't talked about as much. It's quite difficult to add on to what Anne stated last year in her presentation, but I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and hopefully I'll be there in person next year to meet you. Bye! Will you go for save yourself? Okay.
We are communities of experts. We're a melting pot of ideas and dreams. Yet we may not always welcome diversity and change. Hello to you all. My name is Jillian Carson-Jackson, and I am so pleased to be with you to celebrate Women in Maritime Day 2023. As a woman in maritime, I so often heard, "You can't." And when less than 2% of seafarers are women, you start to begin to believe that you can't. So I can't remember how many times I was told that I couldn't work at sea. I couldn't succeed in the maritime industry. I remember a specific example of that. You can't do that. We were at anchor in the Arctic, and we had barges going to and from the shore, which were being driven by the officer of the watch. Well, I love small boat work. I grew up on small boats in Georgian Bay in Ontario. I was so looking forward to my watch. It was a lovely day. I came on the bridge with a spring in my step, knowing that the mate would assign me to the barge work. However, I was told, as soon as I got on watch, that role fell to the boatswain. I was not allowed to drive the barge. This was on the same journey where at every turn I was told I couldn't do that. You can't. I couldn't do something, when all of my male counterparts were being encouraged. They were being supported. I worked so hard to prove my worth, working twice as hard, only to be considered half as good. So this drive, this desire to do more, to fit in, it followed me from ship and then from ship to shore. I actually didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be the woman who did the job. I just wanted to do the job. And to do the job without that ever-present comment of, "You can't." Well, International Women's Day is a way to recognize that, yes, we can, and we do. While it is focused on women in maritime, it's really about the aspects of diversity, of equity, of inclusion, and acceptance. This isn't a woman's issue. It is a societal issue. It is a human issue. We need to act. We need to take action to bring about the change that we know must come. The time to talk about change is over. The time to experience change is now. How can we make that move from words to action? Well, the theme for Women in Maritime Day this year is really great. It's mobilizing networks. But that assumes you have those networks. As a young officer, I didn't do the network thing well. In fact, believe it or not, I still get really nervous when I'm put in a situation where I need to network. What is networking anyways? Well, I used to think it was that small talk, that schmoozing, that smooth talking that you did to ingratiate yourself to the superiors. And I just couldn't do that. It wasn't me. Did you hear the words I just used? These are the reasons why I always gave to myself for not putting myself out there, for not meeting with other maritime professionals, for not undertaking any activity that would put me in a position where I need to do that dreaded network. Give me the bridge of a ship with a watch at sea any day. Don't make me meet with people and network. Well, I now know that networking is simply about building relationships. It's about making real connections. It's about meeting with those really wonderful and amazing people who are doing really wonderful and amazing things. Networking is actually kind of fun. It's a way to learn more about yourself by engaging with others. You gain those new perspectives. You share those dreams and fears. You can build a network of those who you can go to when you have a great idea, or when you feel really down, or when you want to just share the joy of achieving a goal. It is a chance to realize that you aren't alone. And we certainly aren't alone in our push for an equitable and accepting maritime industry. This day is a platform to celebrate and to encourage, to focus and regroup, to recognize those challenges, to acknowledge the past and all those troubles in the past, to acknowledge the past, and then to dream for the future. So International Women in Maritime Day provides us with a focus, a waypoint to chart our course for a fully diverse, equitable, and accepting industry. We need to be able to see it. And then we must get out of those can't words. We must believe that we can. We must believe it. So then we can be it. I hope you have an amazing Women in Maritime Day. And I look forward to hearing from each of you at some time in the future when our paths one day, I'm sure, will cross again.
Good evening and greetings from Athens, Greece. On days like this, we celebrate women in maritime. We celebrate them for their achievements and for their hard work. With this short talk, I would like to challenge our attitude and our perception on this matter. Now, I would like you to take a step back mentally and think about the message that we send when we talk about empowering women. Empowering someone actually takes their power away because it implies that they need to take permission from someone else. Empowering women means that we need external validation and we need extra support by someone else. I believe that this leads to women falling into a victim mode, believing basically that the world is against us and that we are just victims of the situation. If we have this attitude, we are passive, and it's definitely not going to help our career. So I would like to challenge you and think about ways that you can take take control of your career and take ownership of what happens. And I'm not talking about what happens to you, because unfortunately, there will be situations that will be challenging and there will be obstacles that you will have to overcome. But I'm sure you've heard that. We are not always in control of what happens to us, but we are in control of how we react to these situations. And that's exactly where your power lies. The choice that you can make on how you will react in each situation. When you see successful people in maritime, regardless of what their version of success is, I want you to think about all the obstacles they had to overcome and all the challenges they faced, whether they were men or women. And I want you to realize that if they can do it, you can do it too. But it's all about how you react in situations and the choices that you make. If you want to succeed and achieve your goals, then you need to set some priorities. You need to understand that success is all about making priorities and setting the expectations that you have from yourself. It's about being clear on what you are willing to sacrifice in order to achieve that goal. And that's exactly what those successful people have done. Now, when we're talking about sacrifices, unfortunately, it's your choice to decide what sacrifices you're going to make. And I do not believe that life is 50-50. You cannot be 100% balanced at all times. I do believe that there are phases in our lives and that we need to choose which area of our life needs more attention. For example, there might be a time in your life that you might need to focus more on your studies and sacrifice some of your personal time. Then there will be another time that you might have to focus more on your career because that's the right thing to do at that specific time. And then in order to balance things out, you might need to focus more in your personal life when that time is right. Now, it's all about balancing along the way. I do not believe you can have everything all at the same time. I do believe that you can have everything, but you need to make the sacrifices and you need to choose what is a priority and what is not. To summarize, I want to help you change the perception that you have. And I want you to take ownership of your life and your career, because your mindset will determine your behavior, and your behavior and how you feel about yourself will determine the actions that you take. So don't fall into the trap of feeling like a victim. See those challenging situations and try to find ways to make those work for you and not against you. Think about the lessons that you can learn and how you can help things get better and prevent these mistakes happening again in the future. I hope you have a lovely day today and that you enjoy the event.
Thank you very much. That was our final video. So in order of appearance there, we had Loren that gave us her section from starting from cadet and the early stage of the career. Jillian Carson-Jackson giving us her insights on diversity, equity, inclusion, and how in the past some challenges have shaped her career and how she's moved forward. And then finally, Kate Bollanou, who has given us her interpretation of how to professionally maintain a mindset and the sacrifices sometimes that we all make, whether it be in our personal life or our careers, and how to strive forward. So all of them a very strong voice for the inclusion aspect and about how we all interact with each other in the maritime and support each other. So finally, we have, thankfully, Heather, the floor is yours.
Okay, gentlemen, ladies, it is my honour to have been asked to make a speech at this evening's Nautical Institute SWoE Branch meeting. And I have to admit, I am freaking out. I am no public speaker. I get so nervous, start stumbling on my words, and my legs, I can already feel my legs, they're already going. Yeah, here I am in front of such a wonderful group of distinguished people and so much wealth of knowledge and experience here in the room, getting to listen to little old me. For those of you who don't know me, of which I do know a few, a couple of old lecturers here actually, but for those of you who don't know me, I am Heather Enness. I'm a qualified master mariner. I'm an unlimited dynamic positioning operator. I'm a Merchant Navy medal recipient and a mother of 3 beautiful young children while still maintaining a career at sea. In February, I was asked to be the guest speaker at a gala. Granted, I only got asked the day before, talk about it last minute. And in preparation to writing that speech, whilst driving to meet my mother, I was talking aloud in the car, thinking about what I wanted to say and what I needed to say. And it came to my attention that in the background was Classic FM. And the piece that was playing at the time was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. Rachmaninoff being one of my favourite composers, second to Elgar. And it reminded me that my music was always my passion, playing various instruments, listening to most music of most genres, and most of all, composing music. And in another life, I would be a film music composer, hopefully rivaling the likes of Hans Zimmer and John Williams. But my parents raised me to believe that music was only ever a hobby and not a career option. So my path took a slightly different direction. Believe it or not, growing up, I was very much the tomboy. Always the only girl amongst the boys on engineering trip visits. The only girl in my design technology class. The only girl at careers talks by the armed forces. It really was no wonder I ended up in an industry that is so male dominated. I always wanted to join the Royal Navy as an officer of engineering, and 5 out of my 6 university choices were engineering courses, either in mechanical or aeronautical engineering. Now, my mum, the teacher she was, badgered me as to what my 6th university option was going to be, and followed it up with, I came across a course at Plymouth University called Marine Studies Navigation. I think it looks right up your street. And she wasn't wrong. I too had spotted that course only the week before. You see, I did work experience at Rolls-Royce in Anstey, working on the Tyne engine, which happened to be a marine engine. So when trawling through the many prospectuses, I was keeping an eye out for the keyword marine. And so Marine Studies Navigation, thanks to Andrew here, became my sixth option. On the preview day at Plymouth, they said that I could do Marine Studies Navigation, or I could do Marine Studies Merchant Shipping, which was pretty much an identical course, but I could get sponsored to do the course. So naturally I thought, yeah, that one, obviously, get paid, why not? So instead of joining the Royal Navy as an officer of engineering, I did the opposite and fell into the Merchant Navy as a deck officer. I never knew what the Merchant Navy was up until that point. Probably the reason that I did not know that there was nautical colleges out there that I could still go and become an engineer. But that is the reason why I volunteer my time to go to local schools in the Midlands to spread the word of a career at sea. Not that long ago, I was at Aylesford School in Warwick carrying out. I was given students who were interested in becoming pilots and engineers. And yes, I wore my uniform. Did I have to? Hell no, I did not. But I did because by wearing it, they were interested. They wanted to ask questions, and they did ask those questions. And the glint in their eye when I was telling them about our industry was incredible. They were all inspired, and they all went away with a signposting to a potential career at sea. Now, it's not uncommon that I get approached in the lead up to International Women's Day or Women in Maritime's Day. It's rare that a year goes by these days where I'm not asked to be featured in some sort of organisation or other, especially given that I am a mummy still working at sea. Say yes, not because I personally want the exposure, because I don't, but because it is without a shadow of a doubt of the utmost importance that exposure is created, especially in this very heavily male-dominated industry of ours. Only a few weeks ago, I was in Southampton at the International Maritime Employers Council conference as part of a diversity and inclusivity panel. Something I said gained the only sporadic round of applause throughout the whole conference. What was that comment? Well, I'm afraid it was me calling out the many different organisations and companies for their ability to talk the talk when it comes to diversity and inclusion, but not follow through with actions. You see, I'm a liveryman of the Honourable Company of Master Mariners, and we have recently created a diversity and inclusion committee. And given that I was the diversity and inclusion liaison on the Young Officers Committee, of course I had to get involved with the new standing committee when it was formed. I sat in that meeting and a lot of good points were raised and a lot of good suggestions were also raised. But not many people were coming forward to action those points. And this is the exact failure when it comes to diversity and inclusion. People want change, they talk about change, but they expect everyone else to deal with it. But the problem is that the majority of people think the same. Now, this isn't me chastising the Honourable Company, not at all. A lot of those members who joined the first meeting were just scoping up the new committee and ergo had no overall interest in volunteering to carry out those action points. I, however, did. I benchmarked the websites of 18 different companies, organisations and societies. And yes, the Nautical Institute was one of them. And I found that of those 18 organisations, half of them showed no sign of anything diversity and inclusion. And of the remaining 50% who did, the majority of those had me delving into the depths of their website to locate anything remotely on topic. So what did I exactly get that round of applause for? Well, I guess it was for having the balls to turn around to a room of industry leaders, some of which questioned me afterwards whether I'd reviewed their website and were shocked to hear my findings, and tell the room that it's not enough to be preaching about diversity and inclusion with no action other than creating yet another International Day or yet another hashtag. We all pat ourselves on the back when these days come around, thinking that we have done enough. It's not. We haven't done enough. What the industry forgets is that no amount of posting on LinkedIn or other social media platforms about these days is actually massively helping. After all, who sees these posts? Well, because of the wonderful algorithms placed within social media, we see it. The maritime industry sees it. Us, as maritime professionals, see it. How is that helping? Now, don't get me wrong, it lifts the exposure of individuals within the industry, but it does not cast its net to a wider audience. We need schools to be seeing those role models and showcasing the industry as a potential careers for students. We are an island nation, and yet if you were to somehow miraculously get a poll from all schools to see whether students knew what the Merchant Navy was or not, my money would be that the percentage of people who knew about the Merchant Navy was ridiculously low. If you want another international day, one that's actually useful, launch National or International Merchant Navy Exposure Day. A day where it has government backing, media exposure, and schools around the country are requested to make a feature of it. Now that would be worthwhile. And it goes hand in hand. Raise the awareness of the Merchant Navy and you'll see a rise in females entering the industry. And we might actually get away from that 2% figure we constantly hear about and yet never changes. The next big question, however, is how do we retain that talent pool? But we'll leave that for a different meeting. I wasn't going to name and shame. However, I'm also known for liking to rock the boat even just a little bit. So screw it, I'm going to. Especially as this topic is far too important. So websites at the time of my report, I found nothing on regarding diversity and inclusion, included the esteemed International Chamber of Shipping, the Merchant Navy Training Board, the Seafarers Charity, UK Maritime Pilots Association, British Tug Owners Association, Maritime Skills Alliance, UK Harbour Masters Association, and believe it or not, even the International Maritime Organization. It truly is shameful. And as you can see, there are some pretty big players there. But credit where credit is due, it's only right I name the organisations that did make reference to diversity and inclusion. And they included the Marine Society, Maritime UK, Nautical International, the UK Chamber of Shipping, the Maritime Coast Guard Agency, the RMT, Port Skills and Safety, the RNLI, and of course, the Nautical Institute. I do, however, have to be honest with you today and stroke your egos a little bit and tell you that I applauded the Nautical Institute at the International Maritime Employers Council conference, telling them that you got it right. A simple yet very effective diversity and inclusion pledge, easy to find on your About Us page. And to further that ego stroking, I even made a recommendation within my benchmarking reports to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee that the Honourable Company of Master Mariners should follow suit and take a leaf out of the Nautical Institute's book by too having a simple yet also effective diversity and inclusion pledge. In closing, I want to thank you for listening. I welcome any questions afterwards, albeit I can't promise eloquent answers. And I implore all of you, if you're able to reach out to your local schools to raise the awareness of our wonderful industry. And with that action, then you never know, the Nautical Institute's hashtag 2 to 20 might actually become a reality. Thank you.
Well done. Brilliant.
Wow. How to follow that? Thank you so much, Heather. I knew I would not be disappointed when I invited you to come along and share our room with us, and of course your fantastic words, primarily around the diversion, equity and inclusion. But as a kindred spirit like myself, inspiring the future and talking about education and the younger generation, because that's what the future is for the Merchant Navy, those coming through now, and more importantly, the retention. So those of us that are here now, leading on allyship and supporting each other and the diversity that we are trying to grow. And as you rightly said, we can always do more. Damn, we can always do more. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned, of course, that the Nautical Institute was on the good list, but that doesn't bring in any complacency or, you know, stand back and pat ourselves on the back about that again. You know, the maritime community is massive. There's so many different aspects to it, and as you rightly said, the educating the young so that in the future things do get better, but also standing up. And as I said earlier, like the both of us kindred spirits, not standing on the fence, but telling it how it is. Yeah, and we can all have a hashtag and have a happy day. But at the end of the day, if there's no solutions provision, if there's no actions, what use does that have? And you so eloquently voiced that here and now for our audience. So I can't thank you enough for that on behalf of the Southwest Branch of the Nautical Institute. Absolutely amazing, and it's made it a special day here. And of course, in doing so, and like the other participants that kindly sent us the recordings, that they're highlighting that, you know, as a group, as a maritime community, we can all do that little bit better. We all have plenty of things to think about during our busy days, but all those things combined, hopefully, to make it a fairer, a more supportive, and a kinder maritime community where we can all thrive. So thank you very much. I've taken up most of the time there. So please, any other questions in the room? Fire away at Heather, and I'm sure she'll be able to answer all of them.
Okay, how do I manage mental health and work? It's quite easy actually, because when I get to go away, I don't have to think about the I don't have to think about the school runs and the laundry and the school like the meal prepping. But I'm sure you didn't mean from that aspect. I've got a really good support network at home. My husband and I have figured it out in terms of childcare arrangements. Unfortunately, my mum, who was pivotal to that, is no longer well enough to look after my son. So we now have an au pair as well. So she lives in with us, and yeah, we max out the childcare. And, you know, I don't regret that, because, you know, I do the career that I love. And yet I come home and I have 9 weeks solid where I get to be with my children. So, yeah.
It's no different really, is it, from the way I grew up, where my father was away every year's on end. My mother was looking after the family and doing everything as well. Slightly different, but it's seen as different.
Of course it's seen as different, because obviously we're the maternal figure. No one ever asked that question to the guys. Yeah. You know, there's many fathers actually. No one ever asked that question to the guys. And, you know, it's not wrong to not ask them, but it's equally why.
You could argue it's better for your family life doing what you're doing.
100%, you know, and I get asked all the time, you know, how can you be away from your children? And, you know, like, do you not miss them? Of course I miss them.
2 hours ago, we just had sports days on the village green in Levy, and with a discussion with the other mums and my wife, actually you saw more of your husband when you're away at sea than when you're at home.
Definitely. You know. I get to go to the sports days and the ballet meetups and what have you, you know, and to be fair, if I worked from 9 to 5, you know, Monday to Friday or what have you, they'd still be in the after school clubs. Yeah. You know, I would be getting home from work and they'd already either be prepping to get to, you know, into their bed, or you're doing this.
In comparison, I'm a shift working mum who lives at home, and I've chosen a maritime career ashore. I probably miss just as much important events as my kids that Heather knows about, that I'm constantly saying, don't know if I can get that off. Yeah. Don't know if I can get that off. So comparatively,
yeah, I have that set time.
Get to more events than I do.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I think you both touched the nail on the head about, we look at the shipping, so possible master Aaron is here, and Katherine look at shipping 2%. I know some people do feel a little bit awkward when it's maritime, when the Women's Maritime Day, and I think the maritime is such a vast thing. The shipping side is very, very small. We never get any female seafarers coming into the port other than on cruise ships or a few tankers. But the maritime industry is getting better in the other things around it, but the shipping thing is still pretty low, other than the luxury market.
Contemplating on that, I mean, the maritime business field, which is obviously the shore aspects of operation. I can think of many young ladies who have gone into roles there and been very successful. And if we look at now today, at those at the top of many of the organisations, be it the MNTB or be it sort of Chamber of Shipping, they are female. So that would have been something you would not ever have thought of would happen 20 years ago. And there's a continuous encroachment, if you like, into the male sort of dominance there by ladies who've got the skills and got the competence to be present. So and again, your sort of activities at sea all contribute to that very much.
But it's the school bit to get that 2%. That's the. We'll go back. Let's go back.
I was going to say that's one end, but how do you see it at the other end? Keeping people.
Like I say, that's a topic for that's a massive topic. I mean, I actually work a job share, so I work 3 weeks on, 9 weeks off, and I have been asked to do what would you call it? Just like focus groups with different companies. Transocean, massive company. I was asked to be on their focus group in order to just pick brains. You know, like how can we better the being at sea for the women, and predominantly for the mothers as well. You know, and I mean, I'm quite an inclusive person. You know, I don't necessarily like being the female figurehead, but I can only talk from a female's perspective. You know, I can't talk from the male's perspective. However, I do like to bring in the parent at sea, the father at sea. So, like I say, I do 3 weeks on, 9 weeks off. The other guy who does 3 weeks on, 9 weeks off is a guy. He's a widow. You know, like he's essentially a single father who needs that extra time as well to be there for his family.
I think that's so valid, Heather. I saw you recently on a podcast, and it was like we were saying the same thing. So although it's a gender issue, we're saying, yeah, there's the maternal aspect. You know, we have to remember the fathers as well, and all the seafarers that went away, and most of the topics that you would think and so eloquently putting forward it was just the way I was looking those years ago when I had children and my son was born, and the 2 days later I disappeared off the face of the planet on my submarine, and come back 3 months later, and I was obviously a different son that I had, a different child. But that's the nature of it. And in some ways it was what Kate was talking about in her video about the sacrifice that we make. And it's not just a maritime thing. We have women astronauts, we have women long distance train drivers. But yeah, and men are doing those same jobs as well. So back in the day, there was no paternity leave or anything for men, whereas I know a colleague of my daughter's now is going to get between 9 and 12 months. And this is when he adopts a child. and it's like, wow. And you know, as a seafarer, I had nothing and no support. And like you, I relied on my partner and obviously the surrounding family to achieve what I wanted to do, to sacrifice elements of my life. But you know, there's pros and cons, and like around the table, a lot of us have been discussing that there's so many good aspects about it. You know, when I'm home solid, no office to go to. I can go to sports days and pick up my granddaughter from school and that. So yeah, it's one of those life aspects. But I think what Richard was saying, because the maritime community is that large, we all have to think and provide those solutions. And what I admire about you is raising the issue, you know, about breastfeeding or childminding or job sharing specifically to stay within the career. So as long as people are providing those solutions for all of us to enjoy the challenges and the careers that we want, and not be just one-sided and think from a male aspect, then thinking about the diversity and what we need to do to progress those into the future, and so that everyone can thrive and seek those career challenges that they want. It's got to be a better world for all. And yeah, and you've put that across so well on so many platforms. So that's excellent.
To answer your retention question, companies have to start questioning how they can look at, you know, like being a bit more friendly to the parents, you know, it will go hand in hand. If companies are even open to the prospect of a job share, people will see that. And that will be the amount of females that I've spoken to who are like, oh no, I know that I'll have to go ashore when I have children. Why? Why do you have to? Why do you know that already? Why can't it be the fact that we're challenging companies to think about, you know, what is it you can do to help us? Because it's not just the female, it is the male as well, you know, like the fathers. This is where I say that, you know, I try to be inclusive, because people will always turn around and be like, oh, what, you know, Why is it always the mother? Why is it not the father as well? No, it's both. It is genuinely both. And I mean, I've seen, since I've been with my company, I have seen such a turnover of people, and that's males as well, you know, and retention is a massive, massive thing. But the more that companies talk about it, now it doesn't work for all industries, like within the maritime industry. I appreciate that. Like, but if you're, certainly it works for the ferry industry and it works for the oil and gas industry.
So what company was it you were with or are with?
I'm with Stunner Drilling.
So you're with an offshore company?
Yes, yeah.
So would that sort of model that you mentioned work, if you like, on the deep sea trades, do you think?
No, this is why I'm saying it doesn't work for all.
So
It doesn't work for all.
specific areas
Yeah.
where it can actually work.
But ferries it works. Ferries it works, and it has worked. It worked for P&O ferries. And unfortunately, obviously, with what happened last March with P&O, of having a job share with them went up in smokes. And that's why I had to look for alternative solutions. And I am the first who's done it. No one else within the fleet has done it. So, I mean, and kudos to Stunner Drilling, they're pioneering the way. And through that, and through me talking about that, is what has got Transocean. And I don't know whether you've come across the name Alice Sedino. She is the founder of Women Offshore, based over in America. And, you know, she picked up, again, through social media, that I'm a mum at sea. And, you know, through that, we've had chats, we've had these focus groups, and, you know, they've even started looking into, again, a job share, you know, which is just fantastic because it is getting women back into the industry following motherhood. And you know, like I say,
Nothing like shortages in supply and demand. If you look at the airline industry, it's exactly the same. We just ran out of pilots. Now suddenly it's not unusual to get a full female crew. Long distance. That would never have happened a few years ago because they just didn't have the people. And you're seeing that in those countries with a different culture where it's difficult. And I was watching a video of there's a female crew in hijabs. I mean, taking the plane off. They were taking a big 380 off. That wouldn't have happened a few years ago. And they're on long hauls, so they're out for a week almost. And because there's a shortage. And economically, they've got to do it. And
also because they're good enough to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost, it sounds bad by saying.
But yeah, there are people out there who are
good at
it. Like, you know, whatever. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
That way and getting in there.
The flexibility, that's going to be key.
Can I ask, so the conditions of service against job share, is this a sort of equals 50-50 split, for example, in terms of leave, in terms of pay, in terms of other actions? Is that how it works? So if you're getting paid for 50,000 a year, your salary on a split job share will be 25,000.
yes, in theory, that's what it would
that's
be.
how it works.
Yeah. I mean, actually, it's possible to look at a three-way job share. So in our case, it would be 3 weeks on, 6 weeks off, with 2 salaries split 3 ways.
Right.
You know, or day rate. I mean, I'm a day rater. You know, so the more I work, the more I earn. You know. Now, what I would say is that yes, I'm on a job share. It's not a permanent contract. They could pull it any day, but I'm riding that wave whilst it's still there for me. You know, yes, I'm on a day rate. Do I get the perks of pensions and medical? No, I don't. But they are a really great company, and they put me through training, which even my last company who I was permanent with didn't. You know, so pros and cons, massively pros and cons, but I get to be home for 9 weeks and only be away for 3. You know, I cannot complain. You know, definitely.
I think if you get a good company, they want you to do that because the amount that they invest into you, if you say it doesn't work for me, I'm out, what a waste of money.
Yeah.
So, you know, it must cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to get your DP time and trained up, for example.
And that's what we've been highlighting here in a roundabout way, the fact that the retention issue is big, because as all the employers know, actually recruiting in new staff is one of the biggest expenses that they have. And since the pandemic and working from home, people, like it or not, within the work industry, because there's so many gaps there, have a choice, and they will go to a company that's, you know, in modern times, meeting more of their work-life balance and their requirements. So yeah, it's good that you shout out and name Stena for what they're doing. And like you say, it needn't be a 50-50. It can be a three-way rotation, and you can be on a temporary contract or a day rate or whatever you want. All it takes is the vision, and like we've discussed at the beginning, the action to actually carry it out. It's the wrong term to say allow. Why wouldn't they allow it? It makes sense. It makes sense for you. It suits your circumstances. When you've got in the rotation with the other one or other two, it works for them. And the company, it's a win-win. They don't have all that extra expense of finding another day rate each time the rotation comes around. It's keeping people happy, isn't it?
100%, Gordon. I mean, at the end of the day, they were filling my slot with agency, and every trip a different agency guy, and each trip someone else had to go through familiarization and didn't know the job. It is a win-win for them. I mean, okay, I'm not permanent, but I am regular. You know, I'm loyal, and I go 3 on, 9 off, and then I come back again. And so I constantly am filling the slot. And again, once with my back-to-back, he's doing it. So it's the win-win for them. Yeah.
How does this work on the line services, on the bulk cargo services? I mean, the offshore services are very different. It's structure, isn't it?
It's exactly why.
As we see, we've got with Bournemouth, I mean, he's here, there, and everywhere. And whereas in fact, with your sort of what I call the line company style, they're much more long-term, regular sort of commitment.
Yeah, and this is exactly why I say it doesn't work. It doesn't work with all industries. It wouldn't work with the cruise industry, for instance, because you're away 4 months. So unless the company is willing to actually take a 4-month trip and add the expense of travel arrangements to actually split that into 2 months, then of course cost is incurred. Whereas for me, the guys on the rig, they work 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. So I get 3 weeks away is more than doable. Or within the oil and gas, obviously some ships are doing 4 weeks on. That is doable. You know, so you're not having to split that 4 weeks down into 2-week slots and ergo incur that extra cost, that travel cost. You know, it's the same for them regardless. I do the 3 weeks, and whether it's me or someone else, they've still got that 3-week travel cost, you know. So it doesn't work with all industries. I appreciate that. But it works with enough industries to allow people to stay at sea.
Yeah, I just want to make it more to the general point. I've worked in lots of different industries, including being at sea, working at the university, small startups, large corporate structures, and so on. And it wasn't until about 20-something years ago that I first worked in an environment which was more balanced in terms of gender. Up until that point, I mean, through no choice of mine, just the way it was, certainly at sea, it was a male-dominated environment. And where there were women, they had roles as secretaries and that kind of thing, which are important roles, but they weren't like sort of peer-to-peer executive, operational, driving the company forward type roles. And it was quite a transformation. It's actually the Hudson Telecom started with the 3 network, where I actually started working with women who were, you know, I actually had a woman as a boss, which was, you know, a new experience for me. And I just found it so much better. And I work mainly now in the profession of meteorology. And that's a much better balanced environment. So it doesn't just apply at sea. It's everywhere, which is great because you know, we all have equal potential for talent and performance, and
we're just lagging behind.
Well, yeah, I don't know what it's like there now, because I'm not there now, but certainly.
I wouldn't say we're lagging behind. I would say we haven't been as proactive at increasing the foundation. I mean, when I started 30 plus years ago, the cadet class of 12 at Warsash, 2 were female. And the engineering side, there was a female there as well. And this is back in the 1980s. So it's been there, it just hasn't grown since then.
I think,
and of those 2, just to the point, neither of them are at sea anymore. One works on the Thames in the Harbour Masters Department, and the other one's a housewife.
I think we'll know we've got somewhere where we don't say there were 2 females. I mean, not
Yeah. And this is
we're all people, you know.
Yeah, it's just still looking at 2% when you're talking about deck officers, are we not? 2% females?
Yeah. You know, I'm not disputing the statistics. I'm just saying that that's actually the wrong telescope to be looking at this through. But it's very difficult not to.
Yeah.
I mean, all those years I spent working in male-dominated environments, it wasn't my idea. It's just the way it was. No particular control over it. But by golly, it was quite a breath of fresh air to find myself in a more balanced sort of.
It's really nice having people on board. It creates, and actually Loren touched upon it in her video, it does create a family unit.
Yeah.
You know, and I've said it before, all the time, in fact, you know, whenever I've been on a ship, the guys have always said at the end of my trip, do you know what, it was a breath of fresh air having you on. Everyone, the morale was just different. You know, like they are like my brothers, they're like my fathers, I'm like their daughters, you know, and people mesh and like chat more, talk more, you know, they can support one another, and it creates a family ethos, and it works.
Yeah. We have
The British leader.
we talk about organisations and being on ships and that. What we haven't talked about is the learning environment. So we're all sort of reasonably inclusive.
So with Plymouth, it's a bit of a different ball game, because you're a student at Plymouth, you're not a cadet.
Yeah.
Okay, so had we have been at Wasash or South Shields or Fleetwood, different story.
Right.
I was in halls just like other university students. And so you had that female split. So in my course, I originally was the only female. And then two of the navigation females got sponsored and came onto the merchant shipping course. Out of the three of us, I'm the only one still at sea. In fact, Carolina, she wasn't able to because of medical reasons, so she's now quite big in P&I, so she has stayed within the maritime industry. And Helen, she did go back to sea briefly, and then she went shore-based, and I don't know whether she's still in the industry or not.
So I had 5 years started, but I think I was the only one who went on to the CLC.
Were you in Plymouth or?
Yes.
Did you get introduced? What you're doing?
No, sorry.
In fact, you'd like to say what you're doing now as a leader of what you do?
I wasn't intending. I was just I had Roxy to come along. I'm under accommodation, but we happen to be very good friends since university. I did my COC in Plymouth, but decided, funny enough, for reasons that were mentioned in some of those videos, is that I didn't feel the maritime sector at sea is ready for women. I wanted to do the job, but actually it's only something I've come to admit to recently, is that actually for all the little experiences I had on ship, I felt that no, they haven't got there yet. And as much as I wanted to do the job, I didn't want to put myself in those situations isolated at sea. So I early came ashore, and I now work in VTS, coming on for my 10th year. I'm a business supervisor at Loren. Kind of have been closely related, you know, still within the sector, still seeing what's going on. And, you know, as Andrew says, I think it will be nice when you don't have to have a feature of Women in Maritime Day, because it's just accepted. You know, I have always fought everywhere I've gone. And actually, even when I came ashore, that fight of having to prove myself beyond who I am, what I've done, followed me ashore. It just wasn't in an isolated environment. I still work. I've never not worked in a male-dominated environment. I'm still the only female in the tower. That doesn't bother me. As far as I'm concerned, everywhere I've gone, everything I'm doing, I'm just another colleague. If you see the differences, that's your problem. I'm capable of doing the job, and let me do the job.
In the meteorology profession where I work now internationally, no one talks about diversity and inclusion because it's there. It's just not an issue. You see, that's sort of a different telescope to look through.
It's different
I can sometimes get a bit upset by these labels of women in. It's so unnecessary. It highlights an issue which really, shouldn't be there. And in a way, will grow naturally. That's how I feel.
The other thing in meteorology, actually, the gender balance has gone the other way.
Yes.
You've got the stamp of the Royal Meteorology.
That's interesting. I can't stop thinking about my daughter, who's not here, but she's in banking, a chance, and in a big bank in Australia. And that's exactly what's happening. It's a male-dominated, being Australian and Australian National Bank of Australia, very much a macho male oriented, because it had this Australian thing about it, which is it's still there. Suddenly, the women are, when the females are taking over the world for
We
whatever
will.
reason.
Take over.
To such an extent that there are certain people out there feeling very challenged, and my son-in-law is one of them, because he couldn't take it that my daughter, his wife, was going to be promoted above her and be his boss in a fairly high caliber banking job in NEB. You're not a director, but you're up there. They're your daily contacts. Australians feel very threatened about it because it's this cultural issue again, and that's not just Australia, that happens in other places. But this has happened, and now there are a lot more women. They drag their other women up with them. That's what I've seen. She takes her team with her.
Yeah. Women do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it happens, and it's one of the ways it happens because they know them, they're empathetic, they trust them, and they prove that they can do the job. And that's the other thing, of course, is that you can do the job, and now they're being taken, whatever. And you look at Jillian up there doing it, right? Look what she's done. And we have a lot to thank Jillian for because she's been through it, but there's others around. There's people like Jessica, and there's others around well before you. And Wendy Bourne. Did you ever come across Wendy? She a P&O cadet back in the right at the front there, and she ended up running a stevedore company in Southampton on the docks, the consul. She had the drive and determination to ignore all the people who said you can't do it. How can a woman do that? So it is. There are all sorts of prejudices out there which need overcoming even nowadays. The amount of trouble we had getting that diversity statement, simply as it was. I mean, when that came on the table at various meetings.
I can believe it. I've been faced with pushbacks quite a few times, just trying to get something like that.
It took a little bit of a push.
I think what the lady who was speaking from Athens, I can't remember her name now, what she said was really interesting. You don't have to empower women. Women have power.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
You've got to hit the trigger for whatever reason, how you do it, and then they accelerate it.
2 years ago, my staff we were never working with women. They're bad enough on vessels. They can't employ them. People were threatening to quit. Now the best staff members are young females. They'll be out at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, crewing the 3 ships on a cruise ship. But it's a generation thing. And 2 years ago, those people that said they've never worked with them have actually now underneath their wing, and they're really pushing them forward more than anyone else. So what you said about making it better on board, everyone's better on board.
Yeah.
Or everyone's better. Yeah.
You look out for each other because they see you as a daughter or a sister or whatever. You suddenly become protective over that person, and it really does create that camaraderie.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference whether you're on your own, like say a group of 50 men, or whether you've got specific colleagues with you?
No, for the majority of my career, I have been the only female. Yeah, 100%. And I would say that actually some of those trips, I had more of family ethos than I did say now, where there's more females. Females, as you said, females do lift other females up, but only once you get to know each other. And I found that in the industry, it's so true. I found that within the industry, if you suddenly meet a new female, you hate each other. You absolutely hate each other until you get to know one another, and then you become best friends. That's what happens, and I don't know why. And I think it's that because you're used to being the only female amongst the men, you're the female, and then suddenly another female. It's like cats, in the neighbourhood. And I can't explain it, but it's so true. And you become like best friends,
I mean,
and then it just
my
becomes
wife was the only wife on board for a long time, and it was like that. She wasn't there, but she was on the bridge quite a lot, and she would help do watches, whatever. But she was doing the paperwork as the mate's wife used to do, and second mate's wife used to do. But as the only wife, it was very like you say, she was seen as the mater feminist. The figure. There were cadets coming up to her and work or whatever, and rather than the old man doing the same thing, just sharing with somebody they felt
But they could
would
talk
be
to.
empathetic.
Yeah.
Like,
I
I
think what we're all recognising as we bring the presentation to a close is that we all want the solutions and the actions, but the talking in this sort of context does have its advantages as well, because we're all talking about the generational factors or maybe a cultural factor, and how we are progressing. And part of that, by us all talking and sharing those experiences, is aiding a bit of context to it, and maybe highlighting where we are making those improvements, purely because in some small way we're all being educated about the context and these scenarios and what the lived experience is for the female seafarers. So thank you very much for everyone contributing with that. Is there any a final question for Heather as we wrap up this presentation?
I've got a question for you. You said that there were 2 out of 12 in your cohort. Yeah, quite a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago.
I've got 6 in mine out of cohort 36. So they're both the 6th in cohort, and nothing's changed.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah,
we've got that. We had that foundation years ago. Nothing's changed.
Yeah,
That is why 2% has been 2% for how many years?
Yeah,
and will continue to be 2% if nothing changes.
Did you see BP? Because when I looked at BP, I got offered a job on a shuttle tank on Shetland, like BP shuttle tank, but that was regular. I don't know if they still do that. Could you be offering that flexibility on the non-deep sea stuff in the future?
well, we haven't got any non-deep sea stuff anymore.
You're not okay.
Well, by all of us talking about it in some respects, however small or even well-meaning, we're all making that progress and that change as a maritime community together. But it's only like the fantastic contributions today from Jillian and Loren and Kate, who provided those videos, and Heather and Kat giving us the chat today that allows us, to voice it in full, and how together we can make all those changes and progress. And as everyone's dream is to increase that 2% and not have celebration days, and of course not think it's a celebration time when we have a first female do this or a first female do that. It should be the norm, and hopefully it will be becoming more of that as we progress in the future. So a big round of applause for Heather and Kat for assisting us in our day. Thank you.
Oh, a lot of people a long way. I know your gigs are a bit dodgy tonight. Great improvements.
Oh, thanks very much.
Coming down.
Really fascinating. I want to follow you as well.
Mr. Chairman, just before the break up, I'd like to put just a word about the Tectona. Some of you will know that Tectona is the vessel which is associated with school navigation. They're involved with, in fact, the People's Project, which is part of the National Lottery, and they can win £70,000 if they get the votes turned out. All I'd like to do is invite you to vote for the chairman by the talk, and hopefully they'll be able to achieve the 70,000, which is helping to rebuild the vessel, which is currently laid up. She's laid up due to COVID, and they made a decision to actually refurbish the boat during that time, because they couldn't do, in fact, any other activities. They're banned from doing so. So I'm actually hard. And if you could pass the information on to your people, the friends you know, it'd be absolutely great. Please do. The Tectona does have a very female component to it. A young lady called Emma, is the chairman of the Tectona Trust, and others as well who are involved with it. So, and what they do, the Tectona, they have 2 vessels, one the Tectona itself, and the other, in fact, is the Olga. The Olga will be down at the Southern Harbour. The Bristol pilot vessel built in 1908. She'll be down at the Southern Harbour, if you like, dressed as a pirate ship over this weekend. I'm not sure I exactly agree with the dressing up as a pirate ship, because I know that piracy is the unpleasant activity still going on at sea. But you'll be welcome to obviously have a look around when she's there. So, anybody else like a card?
Have you got any female lecturers?
I haven't yet. I believe I have a maritime law lecturer next year who is on.
But no.
Yeah, I'm an associate lecturer for you, but they haven't had any work for me, so. But if you were a couple of years ago, you would have had me.
Richard, if you're still there, if you could thank Holly from MLA College for her support this evening. I'm going to shut down the recording now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon.
Cheers, God.